British boxing video 1. So we're going to start near enough in the sort of bare knuckle era. Yeah. So we got 1982, December the 22nd. Charlie Mitchell wins on points. 3 rounds. Not too sure that's right actually. 3 rounds, points, doesn't sound right. But again, says it here, Jack Nifton. And that was to decide the heavyweight championship of England. Doesn't say Britain, England. And in Charlie Mitchell was buried in Hove Cemetery in Sussex. Also, he would later fight Johnny O'Sullivan. Was it later? It might have been later than this, or it might be before. I think it was later. And then we got 1885, December the 17th. Jem Smith wins by KO over Jack Davis in Surrey, England. This was fought with bare fists. Yeah, this time was. And Smith claimed the title. Yeah, so we got 1885, December the 17th. Jem Smith v Jack Davis. 1882, December the 22nd. Charlie Smith beats Jack Nifton. Then we got 1889. I think we're still in bare knuckle era. Yeah, I'm sure we are. To about the early 1900s, I'm sure. Very early, like 1901, something like that. So I digress. 1889. Jem Smith wins on points over Jack Wannop in London. In 1890, December the 7th, Charlie Smith wins. Referee stops the match in the 3rd round. Against Jem Mace, guy who fought in every century up to his 78. Every decade, about 6 decades he fought up to he was about 78 years old, even in an exhibition. So Charlie Smith beats Jem Mace. Who won the middleweight British title, but again wins in the 3rd round. Jem Mace in Edinburgh, and I just realised actually that the rounds ended when someone went down, so they weren't necessarily 3-minute rounds. Yeah, but so it might be longer than that sounds. Yeah, I just clicked. So 1891, because he's a bare knuckle still. July the 27th. Ted Pritchard wins by KO against Jem Smith in the 3rd round in London. 1885, May the 10th. Jem Smith wins by KO against Ted Pritchard in London. In 1895, November the 26th, 1895, Jem Smith wins by disqualification in the 9th round against Dick Burge in London. And I'm not too sure if these are all bare knuckle, but again, there was a few around then. It's only got it on that Jeff Smith v Jack Davis fight. So I presume the others are in gloves, but looks about the era when you'd have the bare knuckle. I'll have to check it out and put it on another video when I do my next one. So yeah, we moved to 1897, February 19th. George Crisp wins by disqualification in the 5th round against Jem Smith in Newcastle. Yeah, and I'll just go back on that one. 1895, November the 26th. Jem Smith wins by disqualification against Dick Burge, I think, in London. And then we got 1897, February the 19th. George Crisp wins by disqualification against Jem Smith in Newcastle. Then 1901, and again I remember this really was the very beginning of like the gloved error in the world scene. So I'm not too yeah, I'm presuming it's around here. So 1901, January the 7th, Jack Scales wins by KO against Cloggy Saunders in London. 1901, September the 23rd, Jack Scales win by KO against Jack Palmer in Newcastle. Then 1902, June the 25th, Jack Scales wins on points against Ben Taylor in London. Then 1902, October 13th, Jack Scales wins by KO against Harry Slouch Dixon in London. Then 1902, November the 8th, Charlie Wilson wins by KO in the third round against Jack Scales in London. Then you've got 1903, May the 2nd, Jack Palmer wins by KO in the 12th round against Ben Taylor in Newcastle. In 1905, December the 18th, Jack Palmer wins by KO against Geoffrey Thorne in London. Then 1906, October 29th, Gunnar James Muir wins by disqualification in the 9th round against Jack Palmer in London. Then 1907, February the 25th, Gunnar James Moore wins by KO in the first round against James Tiger Smith in London. Then you got 1909. Yeah, so you got 1909, April the 19th, William Ironhague wins by KO against Gunnar James Moore in London. Ironhague there, he would fight Sam Langford later on, but here on 1910, February 11th, William Ironhague wins by KO in the 15th round against Pio Nutty Karan in Plymouth. Then he had quite a lot here. February 21st, 1910, William Ironhague wins on points over 20 rounds against Dewey Smith in Sheffield. Then May the 26th, William Ironhague wins on points over 20 rounds again against Sergeant Sunshine in Liverpool. Sergeant Sunshine. Then August the 15th, William Ironhague wins on points over 20 rounds against PTE W. Smith in Sheffield. Then that's August the 15th, 1910. Then November the 7th, 1910, William Ironhague wins by KO against, in the 18th round against, I think it's Corporal Brown in Sheffield. Then December the 5th, December the 5th, 1910, all in the same year, he wins on points again against Dewey Smith in Sheffield. Busy guy. Then right at the beginning of the year, which is 1911, William Ironhague wins by KO against Sergeant Sunshine in the 9th round in Mexborough. So he's 7 within a year of each other, pretty much. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 7 within a year, so very busy. And some of them 20 rounders, none of them really short distance. That takes some doing. He would lose to Sam Langford when Sam Langford come to this country just after Jack Johnson beat Tommy Burns. He's meant to defend in this country against Sam Langford. There was an agreement and he pulled out Jack Johnson, but again he ended up fighting William Ironhague and getting beaten out, unfortunately. Cracking fight at Sam Langford. No bad loss there. So into 1911, year 1911, Second fight of the year, January the 30th. William Iron Hague. It's 8 fights actually, 8 fights within a year. Yeah, because he fought again in January. William Iron Hague wins by KO over 6 rounds against Bill Chase in London. Yeah, that's January 30th, 1911. Iron Hague fights Bill Chase. So then we've got April the 24th. Bombardier Billy Wells wins by KO in the 6th round against William Iron Hague. The National Sporting Club in London. And that's the National Sporting Club Lonsdale bout they're fighting for. Yeah. So, April 24th, 1911. Bombardier Billy Wells wins by KO in the 6th round against William Iron Hague and NSC in London. So, National Sporting Club. And then we got 1913. June 30th. Bombardier Billy Wells wins by KO against Patrick Mahoney. 13th round. 1913. Bombardier Billy Wells wins by KO against Packy Mahoney, and 13th round by KO. And then that was at the National Sporting Club in London. Then August the 4th. 1913, Bombardier Billy Wells wins by KO August the 4th, 1913, Bombardier Billy Wells wins by KO against Pat O'Keefe in London. 15 round KO win. 4. Bombardier Billy Wells there. So, yeah, and he was stopped by Winston Churchill for some reason. When Jack Johnson was going to fight Bombardier Billy Wells, but it didn't happen. Something political along the line, something religious as well. But we're back to this. So, still on the year 1913, September the 10th, Bombardier Billy Wells wins by KO in the 10th round against gunner James Muir, and that was in London. Again, yeah, that was a Tommy Burns opponent. Then we're into 1914. So January the 14th, 1914, Bombardier Billy Wells wins by retirement in the 10th round against gunner Rawls in Belfast. And then 1914, March the 3rd, Bombardier Billy Wells wins by KO against bandsman Jack Blake in London. April the 30th, Bombardier Billy Wells wins on points over 20 rounds against bandsman Dick Rice. Yeah, April 30th, 1914, Bombardier Billy Wells wins on points over 20 rounds against bandsman Dick Rice. Then 1915, February the 27th, Bombardier Billy Wells wins by KO again against bandsman Dick Rice again, but this time by KO in the 6th round. Then 1915, May the 31st, Bombardier Billy Wells wins by KO in the 9th round against Dick Smith in London. Then December the 27th, Bombardier Billy Wells wins by KO in the 1st round against bandsman Dick Rice again. Wins by KO in the 1st round this time in Liverpool. Then 1916, February the 21st, Bombardier Billy Wells wins by KO against Dick Smith in London. Then March the 31st, Bombardier Billy Wells wins by KO in the 5th round against Pio Nutty Karan in Plymouth. August the 26th, Bombardier Billy Wells wins by retirement in the 9th round against Dick Smith in Newcastle. Go up here. So here we go. So same year, 1916, December the 18th, Bombardier Billy Wells wins in the 2nd round. Referee stopped the fight against Dan Voiles in London, and he wins the Lonsdale bout outright. Bombardier Billy Wells there. So we got 1919. Yeah, so 1919. So February 27th, 1919, Joe Beckett wins by KO over in the 5th round over Bombardier Billy Wells in London. Then 1919, May the 26th, Frank Goddard wins by retirement in the 10th round against Jack Curfey in London. That's April the 26th, 1919. Then 1919, June the 17th, Joe Beckett wins by KO in 2 rounds against Frank Goddard in London. Then 1920, March the 5th, Joe Beckett wins by KO in the 5th round against Dick Smith in London. Then 1920, May the 10th, Joe Beckett wins by 3rd round KO against Bombardier Billy Wells in London. Then 1921, September the 12th, Joe Beckett wins in the 12th round. Referee stops the fight against Noel Boy McCormick in London. And then 1923, March the 14th, Joe Beckett wins by KO in the 17th round against Dick Smith in London. And then November the 21st, Frank Goddard wins by disqualification in the 2nd round against Jack Bloomfield in London. So then we've got 1924, April the 29th, Frank Goddard wins by KO in the 6th round against Jack Stanley in London. That's 1924, April the 29th, Frank Goddard wins by KO against Jack Stanley in London. And so it was 1923 also, Frank Goddard wins by disqualification against Jack Bloomfield in London. Then we go to 1926, March the 18th, Phil Scott, sometimes known as Fainting Phil Scott. I think he's for a few fights, I think, something along them lines. But again, I'm sure that's the same guy. There's a few Phil Scotts, but that's the same one. 1926, March the 18th. Phil Scott wins by KO against Frank Goddard in London, 3-round KO. The same year, Dempsey fought Tunney, this was. One of their 2 fights. And then April the 30th, Phil Scott wins by retirement against Noel Boy McCormick from Manchester. Then 1931, November the 16th, Roger Mean wins on points over 15 rounds against Charlie Smith in Leicester. 1932, same year, The Olympics were in USA. 1932, July the 12th. Jack Peterson wins by KO in the second round against Reggie Mean in London. Then 1933, January 26th, Jack Peterson wins by KO in the 12th round against Jack Pettifer in London. Then 1933, July 12th, Jack Peterson wins by disqualification in the second round against Jack Doyle in London. Then 1933, November the 30th, Len Harvey, great old fighter. My dad met him years ago at a youth club back in the day, but again, cracking fighter. Len Harvey fought in heavyweight division, started very young. So November 30th, Len Harvey wins on points over 15 rounds against Jack Peterson in London. 1934, June the 4th, Jack Peterson wins by retirement in 12 rounds against Len Harvey in London. Then 1934, December the 19th, Jack Peterson wins on points over 15 rounds against George Cook in London. Again, Uruguay won the World Cup then, football. December the 17th, 1934. Yeah, the same year Uruguay won the World Cup. Totally digressing. So, December the 17th, 1934, Jack Peterson wins on points over 15 rounds against George Cook in London. Then in 1936, January 29th, Jack Peterson wins on points over 15 rounds against Len Harvey in London. And again, this is the same year Jesse Owens won the golds in the Berlin Olympics. But here we are, 1936, April the 23rd, Jack Peterson wins on points over 15 rounds against Jock McAvoy, shall I say, in London. Then 1936, August the 17th, Ben Ford wins the third round. Referee stops the fight. Jack Peterson, it's in Leicester. And then you got 1937, March 15th, Tommy Farr, cracking old champion. Again, this is the old BBC British Border Control belt. Tommy Farr, 1937, March 15th. Tommy Farr wins on points over 15 rounds against Ben Ford in London. British Border Control belt. Yeah. Ben Ford, good fighter. South African descent from what I remember. And and he died in Shoreham in Sussex. So a few coincidences there. Charlie Mitchell earlier in Hove, Sussex. Tommy Farr from Tony Paddy, Wales. So 1938, December the 1st, Len Harvey wins by disqualification in the fourth round against Eddie Phillips in London. Then 1944, September the 15th, Jack London wins on points. He was the dad of Brian London in the 60s and the 50s. 1944, September the 15th, Jack London wins on points over 15 rounds against Freddie Mills in Manchester. And I know an old guy, about 90, who used to spar with Freddie Mills. Yes, so 1945, July the 17th, Bruce Woodcock wins by KO in the sixth round against Jack London in London. And he would actually win a version of a world title, actually, Bruce Woodcock. It was a British Border Control. Only time it was done, from what I know, especially in the heavyweight division, when they didn't agree. Yeah, someone being a champion. But it was, it was sort of like a lesser version of one. But I digress. So back to Bruce Woodcock. Yeah, so 1945. July 17th, Bruce Woodcock wins by KO in the sixth round against Jack London in London. Then 1949, June the 2nd, Bruce Woodcock wins by KO against Freddie Mills in London. 14 round KO, Bruce Woodcock over Freddie Mills in London. Then 1950, November the 14th, 1950. Jack Gardner wins by retirement in the 11th round against Bruce Woodcock in London. 1952, that's the year of the Helsinki Olympics. 1952, March the 11th, Johnny Williams wins on points over 15 rounds against Jack Gardner in London. Then 1953, May the 12th, Don Cockle. That was Tommy Farr's last fight actually, when he fought Don Cockle, but here Don Cockle's fighting someone else when he did make his second comeback years later. 1953, May the 12th, Don Cockle wins on points over 15 rounds against Johnny Williams in London. Then 1953, May the 12th, Don Cockle wins on points over 15 rounds against Johnny Williams in London. Yeah, it's done that. 1956, that was a year of the Melbourne Olympics. 1956, August the 27th, Joe Erskine wins on points over 15 rounds against Johnny Williams in Cardiff. 1957, September the 17th, Joe Erskine wins on points over R. Henry Cooper in London. Then 1958, the year Brazil won the Football World Cup in Sweden. 1958 here, June the 3rd, Brian London, that's Brian, the son of Jack earlier, wins by KO in the 8th round against Joe Erskine in London. Then 1959, January the 12th, Henry Cooper wins on points over 15 rounds against Brian London in London. Then 1959, Henry Cooper. 1959, November the 17th, Henry Cooper wins in second round. It's Joe Erskine, 12th round, shall I say. You start again on that. So 1959, November the 17th, Henry Cooper wins by referee stopping the fight in the 12th round against Joe Erskine in London. Then 1961, he wins the Lonsdale belt there. I think he won 3 of them, I'm sure. Yeah, but I digress. So 1961, March the 21st, Henry Cooper wins, referee stops the fight against Joe Erskine in London. And then 1962, 1962, Henry, yes, so 1962, April the 2nd, Henry Cooper wins in the 9th round, referee stops the fight. Against Joe Erskine in Nottingham. 1962 there. And 1963, yeah, Liverpool. 1962, Brazil won the World Cup. Then I think it was in Chile. Yeah, it was in Chile, I'm sure, that same year. But anyway, back to boxing. So Henry, 1962, April the 2nd, Henry Cooper wins in the 9th round. Referee stops the fight. It's Joe Erskine in Nottingham. Then 1963, March the 26th, Henry Cooper wins on points over Dick Richardson in London. I met him years ago as a young lad when he was giving out prizes after a match. Got a bit of advice of him about using the shoulder to protect the chin, but I digress. So 1963, March 26th, Henry Cooper wins on points over Dick Richardson in London. He would later fight Ezra Charles. Really rate Ezra Charles, but back to this British 1964. 1964, year of the Tokyo Olympics, that was. But 1964 here, February 24th. Henry Cooper wins on points again against Brian London in Manchester this time. Yeah, and he won the Lonsdale belt outright there. Then 1965, June the 15th, Henry Cooper wins by retirement in the 10th round against Johnny Prescott in Birmingham. Then 1967, June the 13th, Henry Cooper wins in the second round. Referee stops the fight against Jack Bodell in Wolverhampton. Then November the 7th, 1967, Henry Cooper wins in the sixth round. Referee stops the fight against Billy Walker in London, and that's where he won 3 Lonsdale belts outright. One of the best pictures I've seen, actually, the picture of it with him and all them beautiful belts. I think it beats any of the American belts personally, the way they look and the way it's designed, but that's only a personal opinion. So then 1969, October the 13th, Jack Bodell wins on points against Carl Gizzi in Nottingham. Then 1970, that's when Brazil won the World Cup soccer in football in Mexico. Beat England on the way there, saving a century from Gordon Banks. But anyway, back to boxing. 1970, March the 27th, Henry Cooper wins on points over 15 rounds against Jack Bodell in London. Then 1971, same year Ali fought Fraser. Yeah, the first of the fights. They're 3, which Ali lost. That was March the, not long from this actually, March the 8th. I think that was 1971. But this is March the 16th here, 1971. Joe Bugner wins on points over 15 rounds against Henry Cooper in London. Really good fight that was. So close. I think he just got it by a round. But no one was keen on Bugner because he was so well loved, Henry Cooper. But he was, guys, 20, 21, I think there. And Cooper was, 30s, heading into his 30s. Really good fight though. And it's 15 rounds, 15 rounds for a British title back in the day. So 1971, September 27th, Jack Bodell wins on points over Joe Bugner in London. Then 1972, year of the Munich Olympics. A few bad things went on there, terrorists, etc. That was in Germany, Munich. But anyway, 1972 here, we're going back to boxing, kind of away from it. 1972, June the 27th, Danny McAlinden wins by KO in the second round against Jack Bodell in Birmingham. Then 1975, 1975, January the 17th, Bunny Johnson wins by KO in the 9th round against Danny McAlinden in Birmingham. Going to go back though, done that 1972. So 1975, January 13th, Bunny Johnson wins by KO in the 9th round against Danny McAlinden in London. I swear he wore, it might have been the first black heavyweight British champion, I think. I'm going to check that. Say about on the second video. I'm sure that's right here. September the 30th, Richard Dunn from Yorkshire wins on points over 15 rounds against Bunny Johnson in London. He fought Ali, Richard Dunn. Brave attempt against Ali. November the 3rd, Richard Dunn wins by KO in the second round against Danny McAlinden in London. Then 1976, Montreal Games, Olympics, where Sugar Ray Leonard did really well and won the gold against Aldama, the Cuban. But here we are, 1976, October the 12th, Joe Bugner wins by KO in the first round against Richard Dunn in London. Yeah, you really wonder, you know, that was a really good performance. Because he didn't always show that aggression, Bugner. But yeah, you know, underrated actually, Bugner. He fought Ali twice and Fraser twice. Actually won a version of the title in his late 40s against Bone Crusher Smith, the WBF in Australia, a version of it. And beats Richard Dunn. So, 1978, Argentina won the World Cup in football in their own country. Again, here we are though, boxing 1978, October the 24th. John L. Gardner wins by retirement in the 5th round against Billy Ed in London. Then 1979, June the 26th, John L. Gardner wins. Referee stops the fight in the 6th round against Paul Sykes in London. Then 1981, March the 30th, Gordon Ferris wins on points over 15 rounds against Billy Ard in Birmingham. And then October the 12th, 1981, Neville Mead from, I think he's from Wales, I'm sure he was, a black guy from Wales, I'm sure Neville Mead was from Wales. Going to double check it on the second video, make sure. Yeah, 1981, October the 12th, Neville Mead wins by KO in the first round against Gordon Ferris in Birmingham. Yeah, and Joe Beckett, Phil Scott, Tommy Farr, Cooper relinquished the title at some point, and Bugner did as well as Harvey and Cockle. But yeah, it's always a shame that Harvey v Tommy Farr fight never happened. So that's it for now. For the British title boxing history. Bang.